You're still live with us on VSA. Now, in a recent development at the Beat Bridge border post, the South African Border Management Authority, also known as the BMA, intercepted 443 unaccompanied children allegedly being trafficked into the country from Zimbabwe. This operation, involving border guards, the Home Affairs Anti-Corruption Team, and members of the South African Police Service, has highlighted the ongoing issue of child trafficking and immigration at the border. Now, the BMA announced during a media briefing that the children, all under the age of 8, are being returned to Zimbabwe. This interception serves as a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by children within the context of immigration and the need for stronger measures to combat trafficking. With that said, joining us to have this conversation is Mpumelelo Zikalala, legal practitioner in Durban, South Africa. Thank you so much, Zikalala, for joining us. And I hope I did pronounce your name correctly.
Absolutely correct. Good evening to you, and also good evening to your listeners.
All right, thanks for joining us once again. Now, Zikalala, talking about the interception of those 443 children, trafficked, allegedly being trafficked in the context of migration. What would you say are the root causes of, children trafficking within that context?
So firstly, you can't run away from the element of poverty. If you had a family in which could afford to send you to a proper school, be able to take better care of you, I don't think you'd find yourself in a situation where you've been kidnapped and being trafficked in the manner in which they were being trafficked in. Secondly, one may even argue that even well-off families, there are systems and ways in which someone could be trafficked, so it doesn't mean that poverty plays a role. But in this one, I think poverty will also play a role. The issue of effective border management or border control would be another aspect that is there. The internal country's migrations laws, which also come into context, which is why in other countries, whenever a minor comes into a particular country, you need to receive the consent from both the mother and father saying that I do agree that my child can be able to move from one point to another. The other one is a lack of intelligence. We say kudos to them for finding this many number of kids that have been trafficked. But the other question would be how many others have been trafficked in the same way without being detected? So we need a much more intelligent process of saying that be able to identify these root causes and be able to identify these perpetrators before they commit this particular crime. Because once a person has been trafficked, the chances of them being sexually assaulted or even being raped are quite high. So we do not want to create a nation of people that has gone, a nation of people that have gone through all this particular trouble. So it basically means that just make sure that when it comes to border control, managing the actual border and assessing who actually comes in and out is something which is a necessity and something that must be done in order to protect the human rights of the kids.
Now, Zikalala, we're talking about children being trafficked without being detected. How exactly can border management authorities improve their detection and the prevention of child trafficking? Because, like you said, a lot of them have been trafficked and were not detected. So how can this be improved?
The first thing is to start with the actual border itself. So determine where the border is and determine the access controls which are supposed to be there. Because if you have one entrance, one point of entry, one point of exit, it is then easy to say each vehicle which is going to come in is going to be thoroughly searched. Each vehicle that comes in with occupants that are inside, those particular occupants have got to receive the required permits or even visas to be able to go through to and fro from these particular countries. And the other ones to use technology. We have biometrics in this country that can be utilized. If you simply mix and you say within that particular border, we're going to have access to the biometrics of all the individuals that are in Africa. By placing your thumb or one finger, you are then able to determine that this is Mpumelelo Zikalala from this particular province, and this is who he is, and that is what he is doing in this country. So the introduction of technology is another thing that can be able to come in order to curb this human trafficking which is taking place. And then you root out all those bad apples when it comes to the border control of border management entities, all the officials which are not supposed to be there, that on a regular basis would engage in being bribed, on a regular basis would engaging in services which are not entirely up to scratch. So if you're able to cover all these things, you minimize the risk of any trafficking taking place, and just to make sure that the people who are going to be there are law-abiding citizens.
Now, from the information that we gathered, it also did state that some of these children were actually being trafficked to South Africa to spend time with their parents who they haven't seen in a long time. Now, we don't know the veracity of that claim, but if that is the case, what measures can be implemented to support the safe and legal migration of these children who need to be with their parents without having to smuggle them into the country?
I think that's where the two countries would have to come in and say, yes, we have laws and regulations that we need to follow, but can we be able to relax them, to allow the kids to spend time with their parents? I think in every single country, the interests and the rights of the child are always protected. And if you come to South Africa, there's a constitution that applies that says all children have rights, regardless of the nationality or citizenship. And it basically says if once a child is within the borders of South Africa, then they should be afforded the type of protection which is required. So in this case, the process is going to be, once there's a bilateral negotiations that have now taken place, you simply go in there and be able to discuss all these issues and make sure that there's a proper manner in which visitation rights are going to be secured. But that speaks to a bigger problem, because that says you have someone who's in your country who's not documented. It's not because you want to deny them certain activities or economic freedom that they might not enjoy from that particular country, but it's to simply say, you need to know how many individuals are in your country so that from the planning perspective, you know how many medication or health services needs to be provided. When it comes to the security, you are able to plan well. When it comes to sanitation and water, you are also able to plan well. So it goes back to saying, if you were to assess whether you're doing a proper ward-to-ward or town-to-town management or accounting of the individuals that are there, have we perfected that in a perfect manner? If the answer to that is no, then you're going to have a problem. And lastly, being the issue of poverty. You would find that migration takes place because people are looking for better opportunities, and they're going to get those better opportunities come hell or high waters, even if it means breaking the law. So it's one of those things that must be discussed, not only as a single country, but with the other country to say, how can we improve the lives of our people so that at the end of the day, they're able to survive, they're able to feel safe in our country, and they don't feel the need of moving from country A to country B, chasing that better life.
Now, Zikalala, in South Africa, are there government policies that actually address child trafficking and illegal migration? And what role does that play?
Yes, there is. We have the Immigration Act, which will determine how one is determined as someone who's not supposed to be in South Africa, the type of permits that ought to be issued. But when it comes to children, well, the Children's Act is very specific. And I must mention this because it does not name any nationality or citizenship. Once a person is declared as a child, those rights accrue to them and they need to be respected at all times. And the basic one is to say, you must always feel safe and be able to provide it with the basic services. So when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to education, when it comes to be taken care of by SASSA, for example, which is our social development entity, then all those particular services must then accrue to you because you're a child and you deserve to be protected. So there are a number of ways in which I think the South African government is trying to accommodate individuals and saying, we may not be able to take care of you because you are now an adult, but we are going to do all that we can in order to make sure that you're able to survive, that you have a much more prosperous life. And we'll deal later with the issues of any payments which are required so that you're able to participate in the economy of South Africa.
Also, how can international cooperation strengthen the efforts to combat child trafficking across the borders? Because when it comes to child trafficking and illegal migration, it is not just the duty of the country, that's trying to prevent people from migrating in. Other countries also do play the part. So how can these corporations strengthen the efforts to tackle child trafficking?
It's all about stakeholder relations, saying that we are two countries with one interest in mind, one to protect our kids. So in the protection of our kids, let's make sure that our internal rules are being followed to the T. Let's make sure that those charged with making sure that the rules are being followed are vetted in a proper manner. And if there are any bad apples, they are rooted immediately so that you don't find yourself with individuals who are going to be easily bribed so that they're able to break the law. And moving to that is then to come back and say, let's look at the secondary issue. Why are these individuals even coming over to South Africa to spend time or to the other country? If it's an issue of poverty, then those poverty alleviation programs must be something that takes place on both sides. If it means that we have to provide joint efforts to make sure that we're able to create a better life for all, let's do that, because at the end of the day, it's going to alleviate the pressure that we might have. But one can't take away the political certainty and the political stabilization that needs to be there, because there is no economy which is going to strive if the political nature of that particular country is not up to scratch. So all those things play together. All those things are then interlinked to make sure that you are able to create a better life within that particular country without someone going to another country in order to seek one.
All right. Okay, before we continue the conversation, we do have one other person joining us. We have Kenya Chifamba. So Zikalala, please do stay with us still. Chifamba is joining us from Zimbabwe, the founding director, Shamwari Yemwanasikana. Thank you so much, Chifamba, for joining us.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for joining us. We're glad that we could get you before time ran out. Thank you once again. We're talking about illegal migration and child trafficking, you know, in the context of immigration. What is your opinion? I mean, looking at the recent development of 443 children being intercepted at the South Africa border coming from Zimbabwe, what do you think about that? And the information also added that some of these children were going to South Africa to spend time with their parents who they haven't seen for a long time. So what is your thought on that, Chifamba, very quickly?
So from my own opinion, I do think that this could be a two-way situation. One, a situation where, because it's festive time, it's festive season time, and a lot of children have closed schools and would want to join their parents who are in South Africa, who have decided to go and search for greener pastures, probably look for better opportunities, hence the need for them to move from Zimbabwe coming to South Africa. But also, it could be an issue where indeed it could be a situation of child trafficking, which is indeed a crime. And even if it's a situation where children are also joining their parents for the festive season holiday.
All right. Unfortunately, I think we're having issues with Chifamba, her connection and all. But Zikalala, just very quickly before we wrap up, what else do you think that, I mean, we just talked about how cooperation between countries can help tackle child trafficking. But what other measures do you think that can be introduced, or what measures need to be amplified, you know, to ensure that we do not have these records of children being trafficked or intercepted at the borders?
Firstly, the introduction of technology. There are a number of things that can be engaged in to prevent this type of things from taking place. For example, the mere introduction of biometrics. Your finger can tell a lot to be able to say where you are from, where you are heading. You have a permit to be even in a particular country. And then secondly is the bilateral negotiations which are going to take place from country A and country B to say how can we work together to make sure that we're able to stop this type of syndicates from taking place. What's more important in this case is to stop the criminal activities which are allegedly taking place rather than preventing people from enjoying their life of spending time with their loved ones. And then lastly, to then go back and say, with each country that is there, let's look what is the economic development which is required to stop people from migrating, or to find out what is causing these individuals from going to another country to seek greener pastures. Is it a simple question of saying that the opportunities are not there in our own country, or do they want to seek much more greener pastures than what we have now? If we're able to deal with those in a much more holistic way, and to think of it not only as a human trafficking element, but as an element of saying that we want to even stop those criminal activities which are going to take place, in which people are being used for sexual purposes. And we want to make sure that Africa is my country, and we all grow together in a much more positive and secured way. I think we'll go a long way in curbing this human trafficking from taking place.
All right, Mpumelelo Zikalala, legal practitioner, Durban, South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your views, and also giving a broader perspective on the issue at hand. We really do appreciate your time with us on the program.
Thank you very much for hosting me.
It's a pleasure. We also do appreciate Kenya Chifamba in absentia. We couldn't get her audio for long, but she was able to say a thing or two. This is where we call it a wrap on Village Square Africa. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is a show where we talk about issues as they pertain to the African continent. Do join us again in our subsequent episodes as we discuss the African continent at large. My name is Mosugu, and it has been VSA.